Our next guest that we're going to introduce is going to be Connie Marlow and Andrew Bailey. And I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say the second names as one name. If I am, I apologize. So I'll give you a brief rundown on these guys. Andrew is an author, photographer, filmmaker, and Connie is an author, filmmaker, futurist, and combined are also original thinkers and inspirational public speakers. Decades ago, they saw the Indigenous people are carrying key knowledge for humanity, for the shift to higher frequencies into true human purpose on Earth and in the cosmos. Their work brings what the Indigenous people have been knowing and experiencing for a millennia with leading edge science that is shifting our worldview from one where we perceive ourselves as separate from the rest of creation to one where we understand that we are all creation and have access to abilities, perceptions, connections that we never knew we had. So again, more information about these two beautiful people is available on site, which is being shown now by Michael. Connie, Andrew, thank you very much for coming on to our Beyond Supernal podcast.
Well, we're thrilled to be here. What exciting conversations have already begun. So we're happy to join in with our experiences and our visions of the future.
Yeah, both Anthony and Daniel, very, very interesting stories you two gentlemen have to tell. And it was great to be with Daniel, who was born in 1942, and I was born in 1943. So you see, we've got a sequence going here. Coventry, England, 1943. Coventry was a pile of rubble into World War II, the most bombed out city in England. And we moved to South Africa. And so I got to grow up down under in the African sense of that. Usually people think, oh, Australia, New Zealand. And I actually got to grow up among the Zulus and ultimately the Kalahari Bushmen, and profoundly influenced my path and my life story. And as for Connie.
Yes, well, I was looking for the missing pieces of our paradigm as a teenager. Our paradigm just didn't work for me. And I just saw that we were out of alignment with the human heart and went looking in Europe for the answers for the missing pieces and only found the same thinking and came back. And then visionary native elders started coming into my life because the answers you get depend on the questions you ask. And I had asked that, I guess I came on the planet just to ask that question because how many people ask that question? And as a teenager, and these visionary elders started coming into my life, and I saw through them what I saw. I mean, the switch flipped, and I saw through them that they were speaking about the true nature of the universe. The flying ones, the swimming ones, the standing ones, the trees, that everything, the rock people, that they all had consciousness and all spoke and all had spirit. And also the fact that they telepathically communicate. And so I saw that the native people all telepathically communicated and their abilities to heal and their abilities to go interdimensionally and all that. I just got it, that was what's up for humanity. If they can do it, we can do it. And so I just saw that they were holding something key for the future of humanity. And this was in the early 90s. And so it's just been a given for me that we, this beyond being human, Andrew actually says it's about being truly human, where we're going, that we haven't gotten there yet. And so it's just been a given for me, and I've been creating forums for these visionary elders to share their understanding of the nature of the universe, because it opens hearts, it opens minds, and it opens hearts. It changed my life entirely, how I raised my children, and I just got it. And they said, listen, the elders said, listen, and I listened. And the important thing is then to act on what you hear, and I acted on what I heard. And I let my son drop out of first grade because he said, my feelings tell me I don't belong here in school. And I said, okay, trust your feelings, Luke, is what Obi-Wan Kenobi said. So I let him go. And I knew that the native people always just watched the their children and watched what they were gravitating to so that they would be given the gifts they needed for their soul's journey and their gifts. And I knew that the loving universe was going to give my son everything he needed to become that gift. And that's absolute trust. And he's now in his, well, he's just turning 40 now and is very successful photographer in LA, etc. So we've written a book called The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm, which is this book, and which Andrew wrote, actually. And
did a physical writing based on a lot of Connie's extraordinary articulations. There it is. Okay. Thank you, Michael. You know, we met in a gathering of elders, of Indigenous elders at the Omega Institute, as you may or may not know about, in upstate New York, in Rhinebeck, New York. And it was extraordinary to meet this person who I had spent decades studying and practicing and with gurus and yogis and Native American sweat lodges and all of the things and Sufis and all of the things that had influenced my life. I meet this young lady.
Phenomenal.
I meet this young lady, and I meet her, and it was instantaneous. We fell madly in love, and we sensed rapidly that we had destiny. And we got to work on our first film together, In Search of the Future, What Do the Wise Ones Know, where we traveled to the Kalahari to my friends, the Bushmen, who many of you may know from the films, the Gods Must Be Crazy. Anybody heard of those films? Wonderful, wonderful, hilarious, but deep wisdom films at the same time. And I had the great privilege of, well, firstly, let me preface it with, I grew up in South Africa, as I mentioned, with a science education and began lecturing in chemistry and mathematics at the local university in Durban, South Africa. And we'd go up into the mountains called the Dragon Mountains, the Drakensberg in South Africa, where there is all this wonderful, wonderful rock art, these polychrome paintings, absolutely beautiful, beautiful art. They belong in any gallery if they were on canvas, but they're on rock. And the paintings were everywhere, and the painters were nowhere. They were believed to be extinct. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase on this one. Those extinct people today number an estimated 300,000 people. So that's not that close to extinction. Close to cultural extinction, perhaps, but not physical extinction. And they're in 5 countries in Southern Africa, South Africa predominantly, but Botswana, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Angola, Bushman-type people speaking the ancient click languages, the oldest languages of humanity. And DNA-wise, those are the people who go back the longest. Because when our ancestors left Africa, possibly 70,000 or more years ago, but they're saying 70,000 years ago, there were those, the majority stayed behind. Not everybody took off and went to Australia, became the Aboriginals, went to South India and became the Dravidians, or went to wherever they traveled, you know. I grew up believing the Bushmen were extinct. So turns out they're anything but extinct, and they're my personal good friends. And I got to take Connie to, and how did they treat you when we got there?
Well, I've never been so loved on in my life as I was by the Bushmen of the Kalahari. Just stroked and loved, and I just saw that they're carrying the heart of humanity. That the Gods Must Be Crazy, that film went worldwide. So to put the Bushmen in the hearts of humanity, and so recognizable. And so that's what I came away with, was that they're carrying an important piece of the puzzle of the blessed, sacred human heart.
And their story is harrowing. There's a 2-foot-tall stack of books on the subject. They're the most studied human population in the world, as far as I know. There are more books about the Bushmen than about any other single group of people. And a lot of their story is absolutely heartrending. They've been intentionally exterminated, thank God, not successfully, but an awful lot of them did die. They used to occupy the whole of Africa. Pliny in Egypt talks about them. He describes one 2,000 years ago, describes Bushmen people up in what is present-day Egypt. Extraordinary. And all the way down to the southern tip of Africa, present-day Cape Town. And those folks are still around. You look at Nelson Mandela and you can see it in his face. He's only a small percentage, because what happened was, while the Bushmen, well, the people we call the Bushmen, the San or the Khoi, had the whole of Africa to themselves for a long time. Somehow the Nguni people showed up in West Africa, the people we call the blacks, about 10,000 years ago. And they were cattle people, they were herders. And they began migrating, and there's all these migrations. People know about the various migrations in the Americas and so on. But in Africa, a long time ago, these migrations occurred. And as they traveled, they displaced the Bushmen and integrated with them as well. And so there's an awful lot of people with, with the peppercorn hair. Their hair is in little dots. And they have this very wrinkly faces, extraordinary. I did a series of beautiful photographs of them that I've been exhibiting and showing. So that's a whole other story.
We have a photography exhibit called Rhythms of Creation, Impressions of Indigenous Peoples of the World.
Yeah.
And our film, In Search of the Future, What Do the Wise Ones Know?
Opens.
Our 2007 film opens in the Kalahari, so people can experience them by going to our website, insearchofthefuturemovie.com, and watching our 2007 film.
And it opens with a trance dance. You may have heard of the Bushman's trance dance. It's their spiritual practice and their healing practice. And once you dance around that fire for long enough, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 10 hours, all of a sudden, down from the home of the big God, you just heard mention of the big God drops these ropes of light down from up there, and you, as the dancer who's about to go into this transcendental experience, grab onto these ropes, and either the big God pulls you up or you climb up. I'm not quite sure which. But anyway, you go and you sit with the big God in his house up there in the sky. And there's a little God as well, who is the mantis, like the praying mantis, who's a mischief maker and a trickster and makes trouble wherever he goes. So they've got these two, their deities are one earthbound and one heaven. And what, sweetie?
Why don't I read a little bit straight from the Bushman?
Here's something straight from the Bushman, and then we'll stop and see where we stand here.
My joy and happiness comes from the spirit given by the big God to the Bushman. It is what keeps us alive. To learn this spirit, you must live with us and come to our dances. That is where our spirit of joy comes to us. It is through touching one another that this spirit lives. We put our heads together, touch, hold, clap, and sing. Some people are more timid, so they only sit and clap, but they also receive this joy.
And so when you come back down from sitting with the big God and basically divulging all the difficulties that's happening with the family and the clan down on planet Earth, and so he's murdered his brother, and so is having an affair with so-and-so's wife, or whatever, all of those details that have resulted in the issues that need healing, you then come down and it's as though you're charged. And there's this, I don't know if you have come across this shaking phenomenon. In a lot of healing traditions, the shakers they shook. And in a number of cultures, but especially the Kalahari Bushmen, this shaking, and now you've got this energy in your hands, and you come up to the person to be healed, and you do this. And it's in our film. We have this little 12-minute film that we can look at today if we want to. We've got some footage from 1956, the first Western contact with the Bushmen in actual friendship, where they were filmed by Harvard University.
I'll read one more little thing. Open your heart to others. When you do so, you will feel our spirit. It will make you dance, and it will make you happy. And then you too will be a Bushman.
See, we can join the clan.
That's lovely to hear. I'm assuming, Michael, that you're going to play that for people to watch. It's interesting you talk about, while Michael's just about set up, trance dance in Native American style, in obviously the Bushman style, then our Indigenous Aboriginal people here, First Nations people, if you want to use that term, they have their corroboree, which is very
Right.
much, separated men's business, women's business, all that sort of stuff. And we talk about what you said earlier, giving an Australian flavour, is the Wodjina people came out of the northwest of Australia to teach people about the dreaming or the dream time. So
Yeah.
so it's quite interesting that you talk about when the Bushmen and the people moved away and came out and spread across the globe, and yet all this sort of stuff is still held true in our Indigenous
Yeah.
populations,
Absolutely.
which
Yeah, we were thrilled. We were there with the First Nations people 2 years ago.
We were in Australia
And
at
a corroboree.
two corroborees, so we actually got to do that and film that as
And
well.
filmed them for our film.
Yeah.
And we had on our film website, in search of the future movie.com, you can watch our Down Under teaser
Oh, yeah.
for all the 33, well, many of the 33 people we filmed while we were there. And we were invited by these First Nation people to come there. And we also have a Indigenous teaser. So there's lots to watch on our film website.
On the website, yeah.
we'll pop the
Yeah.
website details up. And I'm pretty sure, well, yes, you have. You've got your own page up on Beyond Being Human as well. So most of those links will be there. So so people, if you haven't grabbed it, we don't have to keep going over it. You'll get it. Just go to Beyond Being Human, and that information's there. So, Michael, fire away.
Yeah, well, just to mention, so Andrew has his own page with lots of links, and Connie has even more. And the free preview PDF of the trust frequency is available there too, as well as on your website, of course. And yeah, away we go. I just wanted to mention too, could you tilt your camera back up a little bit, please? Connie,
Yes.
yeah, I was losing your heads.
Oh, thank you. And one other thing I just wanted to mention was our book, The Trust Frequency, is an Indigenous Cosmology quantum science synthesis, because the science is now proving what the Indigenous peoples have known forever, but it can't prove the heart and the spirit. And so the science, bringing the science together with the Indigenous, and also near-death experiencers experience the trust frequency. There's been a researcher who has written a big testimonial for the trust frequency that says that the near-death experiencers come back and actually report the exact reality that we describe in the trust frequency with our 10 assumptions. So I just wanted to connect that with Daniel's work, and so that we can have an ongoing discussion.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, so turn your cameras off while the video is playing, otherwise those little blobs will appear. And I'm going to do that now, and I'll play the video. It's only 12 minutes.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, here we go.
They say that in the beginning was the Word. What was the Word? It certainly wasn't merely a word, as we understand that term today. The Hindus and the Buddhists might say the Word was the primal sound, Om. But there weren't any Hindus or Buddhists around back in those days. What if the Word was not a word we would recognize as such today? What if it were instead a sound created by the songs of the first humans back in the dawn of time in the paradise we now call Africa? An endless, unchanging, wordless song, a song that sang the universe into existence. There are two living communities in Africa that still sing the most ancient songs known to man. I'm talking about the pygmies of the deep Central African jungles and the sand bushmen of the Kalahari Desert.
The power is like a fire. Usually, someone must put the fire into your body. A few people receive the power from the big God, while others receive it from another person. When the power comes into the dance, we feel it come into our hands when we clap. We feel something in our hands and in our bodies. We can receive the power as we sit around the fire while singing and clapping. The power in the dance makes us feel good. If we feel sick and start dancing, we don't feel bad. In the power of the dance, you don't feel any pain. We love the dances. Every time I dance, I see the lines of light. When I first saw the lines, I saw the ancestors from the past. They took me to another place. They told me how I must sing and taught me how to dance. I also see the lines in my dreams. We get our magic from the plant roots. That is why we stand in our dances like the roots in the ground. Our magic comes directly from the big God. We also get the power from our mothers. The giraffe medicine also comes from the big God. That is what our men practice. Now, when we have a strong dance, we can be taken to God and the old ancestors and bring back the world that used to be here. When we bring that world down, everyone dances on everyone else's back, the backs of our fathers, mothers, grandfathers, grandmothers, and all of their ancestors, all the way back to the big God. To know our spiritual world, you must know about the lines of light. They bring us all kinds of special magic. They make it possible for us to feel a special connection to another person. There is a line of light that connects you to another person. When you see it and feel it, you become a brother or sister to that other person. From that point on, you will completely understand the other person. This experience can take place during the dance. You must look into their eyes in a strong way. If you are lucky, you will feel and see the line of light that connects you, and the two of you will come together in your heart and mind. Over the years, missionaries have come to visit us. They look at the dance from the outside, but they don't go inside it to see what we are really doing. We believe that their God is the same God that we know. When they talk about the Son of God, it is the same Son of God that we have always known. We love God, and we love the Son of God. When we dance and go into the fire, it is possible for us to feel like we are stepping inside the Son of God. That makes us very happy. We see the light of God. We don't need a book to know about God. We learn from the big God. He teaches us to dance and to dream.
Nga abi ngikaka ngqoni mengqaqawu ba angqaqawu iba ngabu tshelo ka si tambi tam manga ika banga
All across southern Africa, there are literally thousands of rock shelters which to this day preserve humanity's most precious heritage, rock art, prolific, sophisticated rock art that is unmatched anywhere else on the planet. Today's sand bushmen are the descendants of the people who made these paintings, which date back at least 40 or 50,000 years. Sadly, few of them are still painting. There has been no new rock art for 100 years.
Anshikuru katika tauka ka ana paka tunuka ka hauba aka bashimula ka petaka iti kamuke aka khaba kaika ne kha khadu taka haka kana doma ka bamula kitaka.
My joy and happiness comes from the spirit given by the big God to the Bushmen. It is what keeps us alive. To learn this spirit, you must live with us and come to our dances. That is where our spirit of joy comes to us. It is through touching one another that this spirit lives. We put our heads together, touch, hold, clap, and sing. Some people are more timid, so they only sit and clap, but they also receive this joy. The secret of the Bushman is the spirit of joy that we hold in our hearts. Each day, when I open my eyes and see the sun, I am happy. Even when I think about the poverty and hunger around me, I am still happy. I immediately start the day with manageable things, looking for food and water for our children. This is true for all Bushmen. We all think like this. Sometimes we feel sad about our needs, but it makes us grab our sticks and do something about it. We push our sticks into the earth and find a bulb to take a drop of water and let it touch the tongues of our children. We do what we can and we move forward. That is the Bushman's philosophy. You need a good heart, mentally and physically, to be well. This is also necessary in healing others. The Bushmen of the Kalahari know each other's hearts. We also know the hearts of all the other people in the world. You must open your heart to have a good heart. There can be no jealousy or bad intentions inside you. You must go with an open heart to your neighbor and everyone around you. You must look after everyone. Open your heart and serve one another. This is our way. This is the key to healing. We live with the things we have been given. You can't get away from this truth. When you have the spirit of happiness, it will always be with you every day of your life. I can't give any direct advice on how to be happy. I can say that our women stand behind our men. When we support them, we are together and we are happy. To all those people who live far away from the Kalahari, I say, open your heart to others. When you do so, you will feel our spirit. It will make you dance, and it will make you happy. And then you too will be a Bushman.
Wow, you could sit there and contemplate that for hours and get into your own trance dance in your own mind and still feel really connected. There's something very special about what you filmed there, and thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and I do have to laugh because I notice you've got Kokopelli on your book.
Yep.
I have a close connection with Kokopelli from a flute playing thing. I've been taught to play the Native American flute, of which my first flute I did get from Oregon actually, and Kokopelli's been a big part of that fun of learning from a whole nother continent without a teacher on how to play and work with and have fun with. So as soon as I saw the cover, I just went, oh, wow, I love it. So yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for sharing your stories. We're going to come back to you again in a little bit. So Connie and Andrew, you've got your hand up for a question.
For me. Okay, yeah, here's a question. Given that we, Connie and I, are making this film series called In Search of the Future, and where we begin with that is always by going as far as we possibly can into the past. Isn't that a strange thing? But we went in Africa to the world's oldest people carrying the oldest DNA with the most experience of what it is to be human. And from my perspective, the wisest message and the most loving message and the least complaining I've ever heard from Indigenous people. Their history is horrific. And you never hear a word of complaint from them. It's very different. They are in a place that is different. So the question is, if it is true, and I believe it to be true, that we really have a lot to learn as educated white Westerners, as one way of describing all of us in this group, how do we best truly take on you could call it the indigenous wisdom of our species? There is something that we very likely lost round about the Renaissance and the Restoration and the Industrial Revolution and on, where our species is, not our species, but what do we call ourselves? Our group, our white Western, and it now includes the Indians and the Japanese and the Chinese and so on, who have adopted it wholeheartedly, right? And the only people who seem to have kept their feet on the ground and not lost touch with the wisdom of Mother Earth, of Gaia, are the indigenous. And what's the best possible way to spread that heartfelt philosophy, that vision? You've heard some of it tonight. Connie was the narrator in that little film of mine, for example. That is the distilled essence of Bushman philosophy. And it's a question really with an obvious answer, but it's very difficult I think, in practical terms to say, on earth do we spread that word to the masses?
Well, one thing I also want to say that we experienced it with the First Nations people in Australia, that deep heart, that coming together. What we have to do is come together in our hearts. They're carrying that beauty and that their particular connection to the dream time, to the song lines, their poetry, their thinking. They're so abstract in their thinking. As a logical, linear person, I have a hard time tracking them because it's so poetic. It's so beautiful what the Indigenous people of Australia are carrying for humanity. And so I just want to emphasize that the Bushmen are carrying something very special. The Australian First Nations people are carrying something so special. And that's coming forth now with the new treaty in Australia, bringing the First Nations people onto the table, what they think, what they see, what they feel, and the whole healing process. So I just wanted to bring that because we were so blessed to be there with them in the corroborees and in their hearts and in their lives. And the Native Americans, it's just the indigenous peoples of the world are carrying pieces of this puzzle that are so key to humanity. So,
yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Well,
I'm happy to throw an
Anyone
answer.
give a shot at that? Yeah.
Yeah, I can sort of. I think the biggest issue is conditioning, and we have to break conditioning. And with I grew up with Aboriginal people. I've spent a lot of time in the bush, quite comfortable in the bush, being by myself, connected to the earth. So I have no problems with any of that. I think our conditioning to money and the white way of doing things and consumerism and communism and, you know, earning money and doing this and having this whole dream that's been perpetrated to that we have to have all these things. And breaking that conditioning is really hard. And that's sort of starting to happen now with children in places where you wouldn't expect it. And so, our grandchildren, for example, we're bringing them up in a more enlightened way. But we do have still, with that conditioning comes division. And so, having grown up with Aboriginals, I see the division not only between, let's say, Westerners and our Indigenous people, but Indigenous people within our Indigenous people. The treaty is something that is really interesting in the way that it's being forced in some areas and was voted down in others. And there's so many shifts in that space that where I think everyone's getting lost is they're not coming from a heart space truly across the board. And I believe really that it comes because of, fear, domination, all the things that have been perpetrated across the globe from, let's say, our Westerners. You see it in other countries with the caste system. You see this, everyone gets put down because everyone's ego wants to be bigger or better or have more money or this or that. So that's the question that you're asking is really, really an interesting one, because you've got people you can't talk honestly to because they don't want to hear the truth. Growing up with Indigenous people around me, I've heard the truth of the atrocities that were carried out, and I understand that. And from my perspective, I can't do anything because it's not my history. It's the history of Australia in this case. And we see what's happened to the Native American Indians. We've seen what's happened in Africa and South Africa and other places, India and China and all these things. I just don't know a way forward other than to keep doing what we're doing. And that is coming from a heart space that just says, hey, we've got to stop being judgmental. I don't care what color someone's skin is. I don't care what their beliefs are. I don't care what their religion is. We should be caring about our fellow men, women, children, animals, planet, and not necessarily in that order. It's just, it's got to come from here. And this is the bit that's so hard, because people don't want to come from here because they feel they'll end up down the chain, or they'll end up in prison because they can't talk, which is what's happening here in Australia at the moment. Our government is stopping people from being able to even talk facts. And so it's a real struggle to get this point across. So how do we do it? You people, the magazine, Beyond Human, we've just got to keep coming from a heart space, and it doesn't matter how much you feel squashed. You've got to do your divine two-step. You've got to connect to Mother Earth, to Gaia, and write in a way that helps people to understand that better. The problem we have here with the Indigenous people, I've approached multiple people around Australia to participate and help me to grow awareness in Supernal. And I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing anyone. It's just they were too, I'm going to use the word scared to come on and give their point of view, because it will differ from their cousins over here. And then that would lead to a tribal problem here. Then they would say this, and then they would say that. And so there's coming from a fear base rather than well, I want to share my opinion base. And so that is that losing that fear, as you said before, Connie, about coming from sort of the lower, more earthly chakra system energy in that space. If we're going to put people's opinions forward, we've got to expect we're going to maybe upset people. And you do it in a way that says, this is my belief. This is my understanding. This is, and that's what you said earlier, Patricia, it's my experience. So that's what we're trying to do. And you get shot down very quickly over here if you have a difference of opinion on social media or on any other form of media, if it's not pleasant to somebody to hear. And one of the Aboriginal women that I did, she's an Aboriginal songwriter, beautiful person, younger person, was persecuted basically because she had an opinion about something that other Indigenous people just didn't like. So her life changed because she had an opinion, and she was actually working in Melbourne with the government, and she worked in a section of educating Westerners, white people, about the atrocities that were done to the Indigenous people here in Melbourne and Tasmania, moving upwards to the north. And, most people just couldn't believe how much pain has been caused. And yet they get shut down because, oh no, that's offensive to somebody because they don't believe it and all this sort of stuff. So education, heart space, really just trying to communicate from a heart space, saying, look, you might not like this, or this is my truth, my understanding, let's talk. And that's the communication bit that we really need to have, which is why Beyond Supernal is becoming an important part of what we're trying to do.